And we continue at 2:05 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in the Lone Star State.
John, I feel like it's time to check in on what's going on at the LA City Council's public comment section. What's usually going on, I guess?
More of the same, huh?
Well, after a whole bunch of karaoke that they are no longer interrupting with Google Translate because they realized that did not stop him, that has encouraged him to do more, our favorite had a very important topic to discuss during general public comment.
For the general public comment. Thank you very much for the Black History Month. And I just want to inform our council member, I am tired of being a prostitute on Figueroa Street.
Oh, my.
Wait, so now he's transitioned from commenting on the prostitutes on Figueroa to declaring himself to be a prostitute on Figueroa with many miles on his tires.
I want to go back to school. I want to go back to work. And then all those Figueroa people, all those gangster people, they cannot continue to bully my body. My body is my choice. That's Democrats' talking point.
Whoa.
You cannot use my body without my consent.
Speaker, well, general public comment is quite broad.
I want to talk about public safety in Figueroa Street.
Okay,
Figueroa Street is under the jurisdiction of the city. And I want to make sure that people like me, as a transgender prostitute...
Oh, my. He gives the old 2-for-1 special.
I cannot be the victim of sex crime anymore. I cannot be the next victim of the sex trafficking anymore. This is under the jurisdiction of the city of Los Angeles. Enough is enough. I cannot be raped again. I cannot be used my body without my consent anymore.
Speaker, your time has expired.
Well, we've learned a lot. I had no clue that he was transgendered, and I had no clue that he was a prostitute.
Well, if that's what floats your boat, get down to Figueroa, everybody.
Now, I wonder if that could be regarded as an advertisement. Channel 35, everyone. You can't beat it. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, Gavin Newsom may think that the bullet train in California is a success. However, no one else does because there is no train. There's some track that has been laid in the middle of nowhere, but you can't buy a ticket to get from LA to San Francisco. And my guess is you never will because that's just not going to happen. And Randy, even though it hasn't happened yet, and they keep pushing the date in terms of when you're going to be able to actually write on something deep into the future, they've continued to do that despite the fact that they're fighting for more funding in Washington, D.C.
The delays are a-coming for the high-speed rail. That 2033 deadline, maybe that one they're not even going to hit. For more, here's Fox 26 in the Central Valley.
A California watchdog says that the California high-speed rail project is on track to blow even more deadlines.
Well, at least they're consistent.
They're on track for something.
Fox 26 reporter Christina Rodriguez spoke to Fresno County officials about the impact on the people here in the Central Valley.
California's multi-billion-dollar high-speed rail is behind schedule.
Today,
that has been true for 17 years.
To say the least.
Today, we are severely, no pun intended, off track.
Oh, boy. They had to play that Duffy clip again, didn't they? The pun was intended. In fact, we should all stop saying no pun intended.
The high-speed rail has been a topic of interest amongst the Trump administration. New Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, announced a federal investigation into HSR funding.
Joe Biden has promised another $4 billion to the project, to the Central Valley. And the question becomes, should that $4 billion be invested?
The Office of the Inspector General for California released an updated review with an estimated cost of over $100 billion.
If California...
What did that emailer tell us? That's about 60 grand an inch.
What are the Democrats thinking defending this boondoggle of a project? Who benefits from this outside of the people who are employed in the Central Valley to build a train that's never going to actually come to fruition? How can you defend this in a public forum with any intellectual honesty at all?
Wants to continue to invest, that's fine, but we in the Trump administration are going to take a look at whether this project is worthy of a continual investment.
And remember, outside of the original bond for this proposition back in 2008 and the federal funding, California invests $1 billion of general fund money every single year into high-speed rail.
So you know how we got stuck with this, right? Because there's a whole history.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so Pat Brown was the governor of California in the 50s and the 60s. And Pat Brown was a New Deal Democrat who believed in building things. He was the great builder. He built our water system. He built our freeways. He built our state university system. A lot of the infrastructure that you see in California that we still use today was built by Pat Brown. Back when Democrats believed in building things, useful things that all of us can use. And then his worthless son, Jerry, became governor in the 1970s. And back then, it wasn't global warming that they were all screaming about. It was global freezing and overpopulation. Overpopulation was what they worried about, which is one of the reasons that they got real excited about abortion. And he believed that if you don't build it, it's like the anti-Field of Dreams. If you don't build it, they won't come. So let's just stop building freeways. Let's stop building universities. Let's stop building dams. Let's stop building a water system. Let's just stop building anything and rely on what we already have. Because at the time, the state was growing by leaps and bounds. Everyone wanted to move here. Why wouldn't you if you're living in the snow in Buffalo and you see all of the sunshine at the Rose Bowl? It's an easy call to make. And so he was of the belief that we just needed to stop building things. Okay, fine. So we're relying on infrastructure that's decades old, that's crumbling, that's not enough to deal with an expanding population. So that's why you sit in traffic. That's why we don't have water in the fire hydrants when the fires hit. That's why we don't have enough seats at the state university system for the students in California who want to go there. And so that was the mentality that he had for a very long time. So he did 2 terms as governor in the 70s and 80s, ran for president, lost, and then he went backwards and became mayor of Oakland, attorney general, and then governor a second time. Well, he didn't want to be remembered as the guy who just stopped building things. He didn't want to be remembered in the history books next to his dad. So we have the Brown who built everything and the Brown who built nothing. So he decided as his legacy, he wanted to build something that was big and shiny and bold that everyone would use and everyone would remember and everyone would give him credit for. So that's how we ended up with the bullet train. It was some kind of family, inner Brown family dynamic where the son didn't want to be outdone by the father. And so the rest of us got stuck with this project that's a nightmare that's never going to end.
The review found the High-Speed Rail Authority still needs to complete 12 of the 38 agreements identified to move to the construction phase.
Oh, so we still can't even start this thing.
Of course not. And why would we?
There's been
when Gavin Newsom at the beginning of the year, a few days before the fires broke out in Southern California, he was doing all these press conferences to get him on national TV. And one of them was in Bakersfield announcing a bunch of great things going on with the high-speed rail, including that after 15 years, we finally got all the permitting done.
Like that's some sort of accomplishment.
That's the biggest indictment of everything wrong with California. If it takes 15 years for the state to get permits for a project that people voted for.
But the fact that he doesn't see it that way is why we have the problem.
There's been cost overruns. There have been delays in the project. But I hope at the end of the day we continue with the high-speed rail project because it's so important to the people of Fresno.
Is it?
Notice what he said there. It's important to the people who work on the project, but not important to the customers because there are no customers, but that doesn't matter. Customers be damned. This project is for the workers who are building it.
Yes, it's very important for the 10,000 people that are employed by this project. But how exactly does this benefit the people of Fresno? Because that train will not go from Fresno to San Francisco. That train will not go from Fresno to Los Angeles. That train will go from Fresno to Merced. And unless you're going to UC Merced, I don't exactly see how that helps the people of Fresno.
No, it helps the developers there. It helps the people who own the land, who are selling the land to the state. I'm sure the benefactors of this particular politician are making out just fine from this project that'll never be finished.
Mayor of Fresno, Jerry Dyer, says HSR will connect people, but even further, the Central Valley to a thriving community.
No, it doesn't. It connects the Central Valley to a different part of the Central Valley.
This is just some kind of kabuki that we all have to go through where we have to pretend like it's going to be built one day.
Board of Supervisor for District 3 in Fresno County, Luis Chavez, says HSR has already been a vital source for creating jobs and investing for thousands.
You got to understand, John, those 10,000 workers that have been doing something for the past 17 years, they have to buy sandwiches at lunchtime. So they are contributing to the economy.
You know what this is? This is 10,000 people in Fresno who have the same job as George Costanza over at Play Now. You just show up and sharpen pencils 8 hours a day, you get a paycheck, you go home, fine.
Obviously, this project was supposed to be finalized in 2030. We know that that's now going to get...
No, it was supposed to be done San Francisco to Los Angeles in 2020.
But nice revision there, buddy.
30. We know that that's now going to get extended another 10 years. There have been a number of delays.
Wait, now it's going to be 2040?
Boy, they just get real cavalier with changing that number, don't they?
I'm turning 40 this year, and I don't think I'll be alive by the time this train is done.
You won't. Well, and neither will I. And the way that we eat and drink, I don't necessarily know if that says more about the project or about us.
There have been a number of delays, but I think for me what's important is the jobs that is created.
That's not a sign of success.
Okay, you know what you need for a story like this? When someone says something that objectively dumb, you need to have a mechanism like they had at Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where you have the bad egg that comes down the chute and then stands on the collapsing floor, and then you just press the button, and then they just drop into the floor. That's what needs to happen to this guy. There you go.
Over 13,500 jobs have been created, over 12.
What are those people doing?
Who is this idiot?
Have been created, over $12.5 billion invested here in the Central Valley.
Invested in what? They have not built a train.
When people are this dumb, though, and they think that you just need to have a project that never gets completed so you keep people employed forever, and they don't understand the flaw in the logic, they just can't be helped. You can't present an argument to this guy and teach him that he's wrong. He's just wrong and dumb, and that's a bad combination.
The independent auditor, appointed in 2023, also found delays due to challenges in relocating utility facilities such as power lines and water supply.
Then why'd you draw the line through them?
Well, Randy, you don't understand. This is very complicated, and we drew the lines incorrectly. That led to more delays, so it's now going to be 2055 before this is ever done.
They also noted HSR does not have enough attorneys on staff to review contracts.
Wait a minute. So now they're asking for more money for more attorneys for the project that are never be built?
Yep.
It just keeps getting better.
Does not have enough attorneys on staff to review contracts. I reached out to the High Speed Rail Authority, and an authority spokesperson said in part, quote,
how much is that guy getting paid?
Imagine having the cojones to be this far behind on a project that's never going to be completed, and then to bitch and complain that you don't have enough money. And that over budget.
We appreciate the Office of the Inspector General's acknowledgement of the strategies the authority is already implementing to progress the high-speed rail system based on lessons learned. End quote.
Our bad. We'll do better next time.
Oh, yeah. We need a mulligan on the last decade and a half.
In Fresno, Christina Rodriguez, Fox 26 News.
That investigation was announced by Secretary Duffy on Thursday, although there's still no timeline on just how long it'll take. California High Speed Rail's Finance and Audits Committee is expected to receive an update on the project at its next meeting.
Yeah, that's not going to go well.
These people are hopeless. This project is never going to get completed. The feds need to cut them off, and this needs to be investigated because I guarantee you the money was stolen and people need to go to prison. It's the John Phillips Show on Talk Radio 790 KABC. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Eduardo writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Guys, I called my travel agent to make plans for a trip to Merced. She hung up on me.
You know what's funny? You could actually take a cruise ship to Stockton.
What?
Yeah. There's a port in Stockton, and you can take a cruise ship that goes to Stockton, and apparently that particular cruise is extremely expensive. There's a river.
What exactly do you do when you get off the port?
I don't know. I never knew that you could take a cruise ship to Stockton until I was driving through it one day, and I said, why is there a cruise ship here in Stockton, in the middle of the state? Why anyone would be motivated to do that is beyond me, but if you choose to, it's available. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
You can get us any way you can. Go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. You can listen to the podcast while you're driving, while you're working, or while you're on Figueroa picking up a prostitute.
They cannot continue to bully my body.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Light Up the Blues, benefiting Autism Speaks, featuring such legends as Stephen Stills, Neil Young, Billy Idol, Chris Stills, and a very special guest yet to be announced at the Greek Theater on April 26. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Good luck dialing.
The condition of MacArthur Park was the subject of many news stories not that long ago because the owner of Langer's Deli essentially said that the poor condition of the park was so bad that it was destroying his business, and if the city didn't do something about it, he was going to have to close his doors. Langer's, of course, is a Los Angeles institution that has been around many moons, and that, Randy, got everyone's attention.
And it turns out MacArthur Park is now even worse than a few months ago. Langer's is still inexplicably still open, and the councilperson in charge of MacArthur Park is actively making it worse.
Quite frankly,
you remember the first big story we did this year, right before the fires took over all the news, was Ulysses Hernandez celebrating that they were spending a whole bunch of money on more harm reduction strategies to pass out drug paraphernalia and Narcan into MacArthur Park, making that drug den even bigger than it was before.
And surprise, surprise, the park is totally unusable for children or tourists or homeowners, anyone who wants to use the park. It's where you go if you want to buy illegal documents or do drugs.
For more on MacArthur Park, here's KCAL.
Right now, the park is really dangerous, especially because there's a lot of drug addicts. You know, it's not safe for kids, for us, for no one.
She's right.
I would not take anyone to that park.
By the way, that is probably one of Ulysses' constituents.
How dare you?
Why do you keep voting for somebody that wants to keep that park into a hellhole?
Start voting different, lady, if you want the condition of that park to change.
Yes!
It is ground zero in LA's homeless crisis. We're talking about MacArthur Park here, a place where people come to live on the street, do drugs, and all too often die. City leader.
We have our own little tenderloin right in Los Angeles, and all focused on one park.
You know, I wonder if that's done on purpose. So if they take all the bums and drug addicts in the city and you just put them in one park and you isolate them, then I guess the rest of the city will benefit. The problem is you filled the park up with them and then they're everywhere else too. It's one thing if you could just dump them all there, then I'd be in favor of just ruining the park and giving it to them. But if you allow them to ruin the park and everything else, then what's the point?
At what point do we decide to do what they do when you're trying to lead a horse somewhere, where you literally have a carrot on a stick, and we have a pickup truck that is full of crystal meth that we can slowly drive out the city all the way to Imperial County, to that lawless land called Slab City, and give them all the meth they want to stay there?
Like breadcrumbs, except with meth?
Yes.
City leaders have promised for years now to help the homeless there and return the park and the streets to residents.
Yeah, but as KCAL's Lori Perez shows us tonight, residents say it's worse now than it's ever been.
At this point, Norm Langer needs to actually close.
Or maybe he's just bluffing. I don't know.
Well, you remember, they kept having shots of Karen Bass going to meet with him every day for like a week, and even Ulysses came to one of those breakfasts. She promised him something, but obviously nothing is getting done, and that park is getting even worse than before.
What's the point of meeting with them if what they're doing is making it worse?
There have been all sorts of efforts over the years to clean up MacArthur Park, even in just the last few months. Locals try to remain supportive and optimistic, but some are reaching a breaking point.
Think how beautiful this would sound. Langer's in Irvine.
I'm sure he's thought of it.
This is video taken just yesterday of the horror and heartbreak in MacArthur Park.
Great alliteration.
Drug use and despair.
Even better alliteration.
Drug use and despair on public display. Users slumped over in the so-called fentanyl fold.
There is a lot of alliteration in that paragraph.
I did not know there was a term, the fentanyl fold, when it looks like you're probably dead.
I'll have to file that one away.
Ulysses thinks this is success. This is equity.
Another video from 2 weeks ago shows a crowd seeming to be in various states of consciousness, and another, each showing the addicts and unhoused who have taken over.
Affects everybody.
Across the street, bakery owner David, who's afraid to share his full name or show his face, says in 30 years, this is about the worst he's seen it.
I
think we're getting to a point where the feds have to come in because we are enabling human suffering.
Well, and how about all the business owners who have to be treated like mob informants because they have an army of drugged out zombies living next door to them?
Well, it's not just them. We all know what's going on in MacArthur Park. That park is owned by the gangs. Who do you think is selling all the drugs to the drug addicts there? And so you have actual protection rackets going on down there.
Yeah, and part of the reason that they don't want anyone looking into it too much is if the feds came down there and started looking into the gangs that control that park, we could probably deport almost all of them.
Not forget, if you want an illegally obtained Social Security number, you go to MacArthur Park.
Wouldn't that be great if Tom Homan and the Trump administration just essentially set up shop there and just cleaned house?
I feel like somebody should suggest that to them. It would look great. Get Dr. Phil on the raid.
I think a lot of people, they cannot stand the smell, and even in the morning they have people lying around the walkways, and we've been calling a few times with the 311.
They're not going to answer that.
No. I love the fact that everyone in this story sounds totally defeated.
The one that took care of little issues from the website.
Has it helped her?
I can't tell.
In December, City Council member Eunices Hernandez joined leaders in announcing new clean teams, mobile overdose response units, and a street medicine team.
Shocker, it got worse.
Okay, so her plan for cleaning up the park is to keep the drug addicts alive more in a state of inebriation.
Harm reduction creates more harm. You want to see what's going on in San Francisco? It's the same thing that's going on down here. These programs do not work, and the people advocating for them are enabling human suffering.
And ceding the park to criminals.
In a statement.
Well, that's par for the course with Eunices Hernandez.
How dare you?
You want to remember the history of Eunices Hernandez? She originally thought that she was going to go to school to become a police officer. And then a whole bunch of her friends went to prison for being drug dealers, and she switched sides.
And now she's the councilwoman.
In a statement tonight, saying in part, Councilmember Hernandez is committed to enhancing MacArthur Park. This past weekend, she led over 100 volunteers and multiple neighborhood councils to beautify the park.
And it's still worse than ever. If that worked, this story wouldn't be on the news today.
I love the fact that none of this is working is just not regarded as being relevant to them.
But locals say there's a problem there, too. MacArthur Park is a tale of two cities. One side seems to be getting cleaned. The other remains plagued by users and homeless people, many of whom locals say simply move from one side of the park to the other every time the city comes in with a new plan to revitalize the area. Some workers at businesses across the street say they're desperate for the city to once and for all find a way to save the park, save businesses, and save lives.
None of that is happening while Eunices Hernandez is running that district and Karen Bass is running the city.
Nope.
It will not happen. Karen Bass vowed to Norm Langer she was going to clean this crap up, and she did not.
You need a new mayor. You need a new council. It's that simple.
They affect a lot of the business because customers are not coming because they're really scared. Right now, the park is really dangerous, especially because there's a lot of drug addicts. It's not safe for kids, for us, for no one.
Do you think it'll ever be?
Why would we think kids would want to go to a park?
Oh, no. Keep them far, far away.
I'm in Dallas this week, and I'm babysitting my 2-year-old niece, and we've been going to quite a few parks around the city, and they're clean. They're spacious. The equipment looks usable. And I have yet to see anybody with a needle sticking out of their arm.
In most places, you can use the parks. Here, we can't. We don't deserve nice things.
I don't think it will be for the near future.
Councilmember Hernandez was not available for an interview tonight, but her office said...
What is she busy doing?
These people are very, very, very busy when anyone is shining a light on their failures. But if you have an opening of an envelope and they can have their picture put in the newspaper or in a magazine, man, they're there.
Councilmember Hernandez was not available for an interview tonight, but her office says she wants to find time to sit down with us this week. She is very anxious to talk about efforts to revitalize MacArthur Park.
I doubt it, but if that interview does happen, you know we're going to play every second of it.
Well, she's just going to talk about all the beautification programs and the number of people that she's found money to pay to go clean up the park and the number of programs that she's created to pass out Narcan. And she won't talk about whether or not it's working. That's not relevant to her.
In Koreatown, I'm Lori Perez, KCAL News.
There's the latest from MacArthur Park. Don't take your kids there.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Nicole writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com on the fentanyl fold. Guys, come to Pomona. The fentanyl fold is alive and well. I'm a school bus driver, and my children have to see this every single day, whether it's on the park bench where they're halfway sideways on the bench or they're on the corner falling over or sideways. We're not sure what's going to happen. I have to wait to decide if they're upright or not. It's absolute mayhem here. I would love for you to do a show here at Clark Street where there's about 40 hookers on any given day, sometimes in coordinated outfits.
They cannot continue to bully my body.
What was the show that Dick Clark used to host? Was it American Bandstand?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if anyone on that program ever did the fentanyl fold while they were dancing on camera.
Can you imagine us being able to get authorization for the amount of security we would need to do a live broadcast from a fentanyl-ridden hooker street?
And today, Randy, we've got Chubby Checker doing the fentanyl fold. Coming up after the news at 5, it's the News Blitz with Randy Wing. Randy, what's coming up on the big show today?
Well, John, I got to tell you, I've got my work cut out for me today because not only did Gavin Newsom make his silly announcement that he's starting another podcast, but he also participated in an interview with the LA Economic Forum and did a press conference, the one that Alex Michelson was at. So I get to dig through all of that sound in the next 2 hours to see if anything is noteworthy. And if it's not, we'll just ask people, who do you think should be on Gavin Newsom's stupid podcast?
What's interesting to me is that when you have people who are celebrities who decided that for whatever reason they're going to do a podcast and they're going to put it out there and it's going to be wildly successful, it's a vanity project. What they do is they go out and they spend a ton of money. They buy a very expensive microphone. Sometimes they rent a studio. Sometimes they hire very experienced producers and experienced engineers and technical people to work on the podcast. And they spend a fortune and exactly 3 people listen. I wonder if Gavin Newsom is going out there and hiring experienced radio producers, experienced radio engineers, experienced radio board ops, renting studios, buying microphones for this podcast that no one's going to listen to. I bet you anything he is.
Oh, he definitely is. In fact, I think he's partnered with iHeart for this, just like he did with his other podcast, which I guess doesn't exist anymore because Gavin Newsom hasn't appeared on it since the beginning of the year.
Hey, you stay your ass off of Hagenberger.
Now, obviously, he had to deal with the fires, but he has not returned to the Politicking podcast that was such a huge deal for him last July since the end of last year. Now he promotes this new podcast. Is Politicking going to be one of the billion abandoned podcasts that are out there?
It has to be. Marshawn Lynch is an acclaimed athlete who understands football, but has not been someone who's been commenting on state politics at any length. And you put him on with a politician, some random agent, and then they bring in a different guest each week, and they all talk over one another on a speakerphone. Who would have guessed that wasn't going to work?
Well, and the running gag for that show, for the entire run of it, was that Marshawn Lynch should run for mayor of Oakland. Well, here we are. We're 6 weeks away from the big election for mayor of Oakland. I don't think Marshawn's running.
No, he's not. All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another live and local edition of The John Phillips Show right here on Talk Radio 790 KABC.